Hearing Youth, an ICMS podcast series proudly brought to you by the 10th Council of ICMS Malaysia Chapter.
Passionate youths of Malaysia, welcome to the first episode of the ICMS Hearing Youth podcast, where we
Hear you.
I am Daniel Mecha, your host, and alongside me is my co-host Stella.
Hey everybody! Before we start off with today's episode, we would like to give a brief introduction about the Hearing Youth series. Hearing Youth is a series under ICMS Podcast, a monthly series where we aspire to channel valuable insights to empower Malaysian youths by covering interesting topics that are relevant to youth development.
Yeah, so for the first episode, we will kickstart with the theme of personal development, which is something that resonates highly among the youth of today. So in today's episode, we'll take a look at the Youth Survival Guide, Adulting. Proudly with us today is Mr. Lee Jalok and Ms. Lo Rachel. So, hi guys, thank you guys so much for joining us today in our special episode.
Hey everyone.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so now before we begin, could you guys both give the listeners a really brief introduction of what is it the both of you are up to at the moment, like in terms of career? So we can start with Rachel.
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm currently a business analyst with BCG. And aside from that, I'm also a co-founder of AgriMatch, which is a social enterprise aimed to combat food insecurity and farmers' poverty in Myanmar.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hi everyone. I'm Jia Lok. I currently work in Changi Airport Group in Singapore, and I'm also an advisor for the ICMS, International Council of Malaysian Scholars and Associates. I look specifically over two areas under the council strategy, as well as the ICMS Academy, where we aspire to upskill and train and mentor university students from ICMS. So that's what I've been up to, and happy to be here.
Thank you guys so much. You guys have quite the distinguished background, right? So now before we begin, before we dive into the agenda of personal development, let's, give the listeners a brief intro as to how it all started, So let's start with our discussion on childhood, So what was it like growing up for the both of you? So let's start with Jalo.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think among my friends, I think what a lot of people who meet me for the first time might not know is I actually come from a very small town in Malaysia called Langkawi. So it's a small town in Perak, right? And yeah, growing up, it's a very different environment that I lived in compared to being in Singapore now. I grew up in a Chinese-speaking household, and in my town, there's basically just one secondary school, with one Chinese primary school, one Malay primary school, and in the vicinity there's one Tamil primary school as well. It's the kind of small town where when you drive through, you see paddy fields, palm trees,
Understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's a very kind of rural environment. And I was there until the age of 13, when I received a government scholarship from Singapore to study here. So since the age of 13, I've been living abroad in Singapore, and of course, right then the rest was history. My scholarship took me, through my secondary education. I was in Victoria School in Singapore before I did my A levels in Raffles Institution. Thereafter, I was fortunate enough to receive another scholarship that sent me to London for my tertiary education before I went to the US for my master's. So yeah, I think up until the age of I'm 20, I'm just past 26 this year,
Yes, tell us your
and
age, Jello.
and more than half my life has been spent overseas. From Malaysia. And I've definitely been very, very fortunate that for 10 years of my life, I've been receiving support financially that allowed me to see the world in a very different way than I would have if I didn't receive such an opportunity. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And I think that every time I talk about, I reflect on life and think about where I stand, I always go back to the place that I grew up in, because I think the first 13 years, even though I mean I was from a small town, but I think that it had taught me a lot of things, and I think the whole experience has really shaped me and helped me see that the world's actually, I think, regardless where you stay, whether it's back in my small town in Perak, or when I was in London, or now in Singapore, I realized that the world's really not that different at the end of the day.
Thank you for diving into the personal level and sharing that with us. I think definitely what we can gather from that is just the valuable perspectives that we gain, especially growing up, right? So, what about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I think it's quite a contrast. I think thinking about it with Jalot. So he came from a small town. I grew up in KL actually. Actually studied majority locally throughout childhood all the way until university. But definitely had a lot of exposure, I think, to the world as well through many various opportunities that I'm grateful for as well. I think my childhood predominantly revolved around a lot of family time, and also I think I really looked up to my parents as role models, and I think they really instilled a sense of responsibility and discipline to work. And seeing them go through their own hurdles in life has really instilled a sense of work ethic that really has translated down to both my sister and I through childhood. And I think that has been these skills and the sense of work ethic has really translated to my life now, and it's been solidified since childhood.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you guys for sharing that piece of information with us all. I just want to ask, did you guys imagine doing what you guys are doing like right now back then? Or was it like something completely different?
It's completely different, I think.
What was it like? Like, was it more like were the dreams like insanely bigger, or was it the same now?
I'm not sure for you, Java, but for me, like I've always wanted to study medicine, and I think up to a point, there were just several pivots in life where I felt like, okay, maybe it's not medicine, maybe now it's psychology, maybe it's not psychology, maybe it's something else. And now, being in consulting, I think I'm very grateful for the fact that I can experience so many different experiences within a single firm where we get exposed to various types of projects. And I think I realized what I really enjoyed was that intellectual stimulation and also that diversity that comes with it. And so I'm really, really glad that I managed to find something that suits what I like. But also, I think acknowledging that, at maybe 20 at high school, when you're a kid or when you're in high school, you won't really exactly know where you may end up. And I think that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It really resonates with me what you said. Like growing up, I have always I don't know about you, right? I imagine there'll always be that friend around you who told you that, oh, I know this is what I'm meant to do. I know that I'm meant to be a programmer, or that, oh, I know that I'm going to this particular investment bank because I am meant for it. And every time I hear something like that, on one hand, I'm a bit like happy for them, but another part of me is just a bit skeptical because I'm like, how is it that such certainty has never occurred to me before? Like I have never at a point of my life knew that, oh, at the age of 23 I'm going to be doing this. At the age of 26 I'm going to be in this industry doing this particular role within this particular team, right? So so I think looking back, whether did I expect myself to be working in Singapore? Do I expect myself to be working in aviation? Do I expect myself to be working on a Terminal 5 project within Changi Airport? I mean, the life that we live right now, that I live in right now, I think I think at every step of the way, of course, we make the best decisions we can and put our best foot forward. But for me, at
Absolutely.
least, it has never been a case of, oh, I can see where I'll be 10 years from now with absolute
Hmm.
clarity. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, I think I received one good advice from a mentor once is that, you can maybe like plan for 5 years ahead. And then beyond that, it'll get too fuzzy because there's just so many things. And I think having a sense of purpose, just an overarching one to guide you through decisions throughout that time would be very helpful. So if it's making an impact to society, using that to kind of steer you in the right direction when different opportunities come about has been quite helpful.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it really seems like you guys have like similarities in the fact that, well, I mean, you didn't see yourself as where you are now 10 years ago. So in that case, what was the particular turning point, if there was any for both of you? Like, was there this moment where you just suddenly thought that maybe I want to try this instead?
Actually, it's quite funny because I discovered. So I'm currently a business analyst, and what we basically do, I mean, it's management consulting as a whole, and I actually discovered management consulting through ICMS. It's quite
Oh.
funny because I never knew what it was before. Like, I think I joined several programs like the McKinsey Youth Leadership Academy, but I actually didn't know what McKinsey did. Only until when I joined ICMS, and then I met some friends like Zuhan. I'm sure some of you know. He started up the ICMS Consulting Club, and that's where I gained exposure to consulting and the wider range of things, right? So I think it was very funny because if I didn't join ICMS, for example, I wouldn't have gotten the exposure and I wouldn't have been where I am today.
Wow. Funny twist of fate. What about you, Dal?
For me, I wouldn't really say that there was any particular turning point. Yeah, but rather I think how I got to where I am, as I was sharing earlier, was I think at every point of my life so far, and like it or not, that usually means after major exams, right? Like after O level, then you have to think about which junior college to go to for me. And then after junior college, which university to go to, what course to take. And then when you think about what course to take, then it's about, then for me, I had to do my master's as well. So I also had to consider what do I want to develop myself further in preparation for what kind of job in the future, what kind of skills in the future, right? So it was always like I will try to think as far ahead as possible, but it was always more of okay, at this point in time, what is the next thing I want to acquire? And for me, how I ended up in Changi Airport or in aviation is also quite interesting. I think if you look at it from a certain perspective, it's in some sense, right, out of what do I call it? It's like a good, like just a good match for me. Because when I was applying for scholarships, this was a organization that stood out for me, and it was one that that was available, right? That was within that I could apply for, and that accepted me. And I thought, okay, it looks like it's a good match because I think for in a few ways, because of the rigor of the things that we, we work with, because of I think the strive towards excellence. That's something that resonate with me. So it's a bit of consideration between the practical aspects of if I receive some support, I'll be able to pursue my education in such a way as a next step, and at the same time, such an opportunity opened up. So that's kind of how I got to where I am right now.
Wow. So
Life is unexpected.
yes, definitely is full of unexpected things. Well, I mean, from Jalak's response just now, we heard something about like when you were mentioning, the turning points, particularly being after major exams and then thinking about what to choose. So in that terms, you also probably had to choose like, what skills you wanted to hone, right? When you were in university before you started working. And the same goes for Rachel, like once you got exposed to McKinsey, like maybe you started hanging out with those, the business major students more. So I was just curious, and I think that our listeners would also like to learn, like, were there any like particular skills that you say really, really helped you up till now and would continue to help you in your career currently, and you feel that our listeners should also kind of maybe invest their time in?
Maybe I can jump in first. I think it's a bit difficult to kind of pinpoint, right? What is the one skill that would be a silver bullet for every situation? I think at the end of the day, every person like comes in a package, right? Like if you are just really, really, really good at something and you know nothing about everything else, it's almost difficult for you to function or value add wherever you go. So I would look at it more, holistically as a package. Maybe I'll share a bit of my experience of how I decided to pursue the things that that I pursued. At the end of my A levels, when I was considering which university course to pick up, so I considered three aspects. So it was my strength, my interest.
Physical?
Sorry, what was that?
Physical strength?
Physical? You mean physical strength?
That too. That would have one of them. Yeah. So I was saying, so it's strength, right? It can be physical, it can be intellectual or whatsoever. Character, personality. I think all
Personal
of that
strength.
counts. Yeah. So strength. What was I saying? I got a bit distracted. Sorry. So you got to cut this part out. Yeah. So I was saying, so it's strength, interest, and the practical aspects. So what I mean by that, when I talk about strength, it's really what am I, so-called naturally good at, or maybe it's something that you kind of develop along the way because of having more experience and so on and so forth, right? That you are naturally just inclined to doing better at. So that's one thing to consider. Interest, right? What motivates you and what gets your heart pumping, uh, gives you a lot of energy, makes you feel like, oh, this thing is worth doing, right? And the practical aspects, because I think at the end of the day, yeah, at least for me, right, I think it's important to find something that will allow me to serve and to give, but also, be, yeah, financially independent, be able to kind of contribute to the family, so on, financially as well. So these are the three kind of angles that I considered before deciding to take up economics. So yeah, because of my strength with like quantitative stuff, mathematics, my interest in just understanding how the world works. Because learning economics really opened up like give me a new lens, like looking at the world around us. Like in the past, when I go to a restaurant, for example, you would just see the waiter and the waitresses and the chefs and the food, mostly the food, of course. Um, but yeah, after learning economics, you start to see that okay, so there are a lot of intricacies behind. I mean, just think about what made that carrot 70 cents instead of $2, despite it flying in from Australia, right? Things like that. So it was something that really opened my eye to the world around me, and I think in terms of practical aspects as well, it taught me, it gave opened up doors that I felt comfortable taking up that course. Um, yeah. So again, a bit woolly here, but so maybe to bring back to what I really want to say, right, is that I think when it comes to deciding what course of study to take up, these were the three areas that I considered. My strength, the interest, as well as the practical opportunities that it will open me up for, that it will prepare me for, right? And then when I went to university, I was fortunate enough to be part of ICMS. And yeah, I was really grateful that I was appointed the chief executive director. So I had a lot of opportunities really to develop myself as a leader in my soft skills. But at the end of my 3 years of undergrad, when I was deciding which master's course to then take up, I then applied the same lens, right? Thinking about my strength, my interests, as well as practical aspects. And at that point, I thought that the soft skills has been very well developed because of ICMS, right? And I think I was getting a bit out of balance because in terms of hard skills, that was something that was lacking. And then I started questioning myself. So if I could pick something to develop myself in, what areas would that be, right? And that's how I came to decide that I wanted to bring financial knowledge to the table. In a discussion, I wanted to have more specialized knowledge in this particular area. And again, it was something that played to my strength, interest, and also was practical. So that's how I decided to take up my master's in finance eventually. Yeah, so that is something that has been guiding me along the way. Right now, one of the things that I'm reading up on is about how to shape organizational culture. So it's again out of interest, but also to help me do my job better as an advisor. So yeah, that's how it has led me to do this. Yeah.
Wow.
Rachel?
Wow. Wait, hang on a minute. So, like, from the three that Jalop mentioned just now, like, your strengths, passion, as well as the practicality. So, I do recall, Rachel, in your introduction, you were mentioning that you did have a startup, like, called Agromatch, right, about food insecurity. So, I was wondering, like, in terms of, like, entrepreneurship, they always feel like it's an issue about, applying skills to opportunities that you have to create yourself. So like that's kind of like what I feel is a key part of entrepreneurship, right? So like you're the one who's deciding that I don't need to depend on the traditional opportunities that are in society. Instead, I'm going to make my own. So from that, like, do you perhaps have a different outlook on how you built yourself and how you reach where you are today compared to Jalop's more like, could I may I put it this way, maybe like traditional and secure way of looking for a career?
I personally think the framework that I saw Jalok's face is quite funny. I think Jalok's sort of like a framework, right? To which how he's approaching this is actually quite applicable to anything really, even in entrepreneurship. So if you think about it, in terms of strength, so it's about having that enough self awareness to understand, what are you good at? Are you good at creating new ideas? Are you good at starting ideas that you may just like write up in the room. I know there's some people who are very visionary, but when it comes to the action side of things, they may need a bit more push. So I think that kind of distills down to self-awareness, right? Really, number one, knowing your strengths, very much like what Jalak said, and using that to your advantage to leverage, to achieve your goals. Second is then also using self-awareness to identify what are some areas of development do you really want to further hone on. So, like, I think Jalok here, he was saying, like, okay, I already got my soft skills settled. I want to make sure that I have some hard skills to contribute. That's very similar approach to, I think, what I did. So, for example, for me, it's like, okay, we know that we want to start up this program, but we don't really know much about agriculture, for example. And then, having that self-awareness to then develop certain areas in terms of agricultural hard knowledge, or then also then starting a business. What are some things do I need to know? And really kind of distilling the key points and the key skills that you need to learn, and then actually acting on those actions. Yeah, I think that's mainly it, to be honest. I think it's quite simple if you think about it, but I think what's hard is to actually have the discipline to execute that every day, and the hard work to put in to actually get from zero to hero, right?
Yes, definitely.
And I think maybe just to add a little, I think to Stella's original question, which we have kind of repeated since, it was really on what is some skill that what are some skills that we think are important for the youth of today.
I think I have a really quick one here. Is that I think problem solving in general is
critical thinking,
right? Critical thinking, problem solving skills. I mean, these are great. I think that's something that you should always try to hone on. I think I use that when I was starting AgriMatch. I use that when I'm currently in my job. It's critically important for you to have problem solving skills. I think aside from that is communication, right? If you have great ideas but you can't communicate them, then that's another obstacle that you may face. So communication skills are very important. Aside from that, I guess this is something personal. I think also in the BCG, framework where we kind of evaluate people is another one is practicality and effectiveness. So how are you very practical in how you may approach problems to help save time, for example? And I think these things have been very applicable so far. I don't see them being very limiting to a certain field, and very vastly applicable to, I think, even in research and university, to even what Jalop's doing now.
Great, thanks. I think to add on to what Rachel has shared, for me, maybe it's not so much a skill like a traditional skill per se, but one thing that I think is that I would really encourage everyone to kind of develop is self-awareness and being intentional about things. I think this world that we live in is, if we're not careful about it, it's so easy for us to be sucked into the noise around us. I mean, there are so many things that are said to be important, right? You go on the Instagram and then there'll be this person telling you to fashion product or that makeup product or that skincare product or your fitness being the most important, family time and so on and so forth. So I think if you're not careful with it, indeed, right, I think there's a place for everything. But if you're not careful with it, it's very easy to be sucked into what everything else or everyone else say to be important, right?
Absolutely.
So I think developing the self-awareness of this is who I am, this is where I am at this point in time, this is where I want to get to as a next step, and these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and these are what I need to do to get myself from point A to point B. I think that kind of thinking is something that a lot of people don't actively practice. And that's what I would call, intentionality. Being intentional about that, being deliberate about getting yourself from here to there instead of just leaving it to chance. Because when you leave it to chance, chances are that 5 years from now you are still very much the same person as you were. Even if you were a bit different, it will be because the environment around you made you so, right? And when you leave it to chance, when you live your life to chance like that, I think, likelihood is not everyone will be the most pleased with the path that they take, and you become just like a passenger, in the
Yeah.
ride of life instead of being the driver.
Gotta take ownership. But actually, one thing that's very interesting I realize is that we all have to understand, all the viewers listening out here, that Jalok is like an overachiever. Okay, so for him to have achieved what he has done today, it's very important to think. I would think that a strive for excellence and a constant sense of self improvement has underpinned. I mean, it's one of the main things that I think Jalok you may believe in. If not, I don't think he would have seeked for that improvement in terms of like, okay, I want to improve myself further. These are the strengths, these are my weaknesses, right? And I think it's very important for our viewers to know that having that curiosity and that yearning for learn something new and to improve yourself is very important. And I think that's something I also believe.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
love it.
Yeah, I think that, for most of our viewers as well, as much as they want to, constantly strive to be curious, constantly strive to be ambitious, which are all good things all in all, but, there always comes a time when, especially most people, they go through these types of challenges in the way, especially in terms of setting their direction. So could you guys perhaps share with us, like, especially, in terms of challenges, what's the right mindset when you approach it, or like how best could we overcome those types of obstacles in our life, especially when it comes to setting these directions? Jalo, you could go first.
Oh, okay. Great question. Big question. Um, yeah, I just want to circle a little back to what Rachel mentioned, right, about the strive for excellence. I remember when I was in secondary four, I came across this quote. I think back then, like I was a sucker for like inspirational quotes. So my
Yeah.
wall would have like little writing here
Humble
and there.
quote.
That's right. That's right. And one thing that stuck with me was this: um, the most dangerous thing for most of us is not aiming too high and miss it. It's that we aim too low and reach it. And
Definitely.
the
Wow.
first time I saw that, it resonated so much with me because indeed, I think I feel like there's so many people with so much potential. Um, but when you aim low and then you reach it, it makes us more prone to being comfortable and
Mm.
being okay that hey, maybe this is what I'm meant to do, maybe this is what I'm meant to be, this is what I'm meant to have, right? And yeah, and I think that constantly aiming for something that you're comfortable with is something that I think makes a lot of sense. But in so doing, I mean, as in it makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I repeat that. Yeah, I think aiming for something that you have confidence in achieving is something that comes natural to many people. But I think the danger of that is, end up you shortchange yourself. You deprive yourself of opportunities that could have come your way, because you think, oh, maybe it's a bit too hard, maybe it's a bit too high, maybe it just seems a bit too impossible, and it's not a risk that I want to take, right? So
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think with that in mind, um, there have been many times in my life so far that I have failed to achieve what I set out to achieve. Um, yeah, but when that happens, I somehow always am able to find the strength um, to look at that squarely and know that I mean, it was fine, right? Because to begin with, it was a difficult goal. I had no full confidence that I can achieve it. I tried and I gave my best. And yeah, I failed. But even though I failed, because I aimed high, I ended up achieving more than I would have if I didn't. That's a bit of a mouthful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I'm quite good at talking a lot. Sorry, please cut it out. But my point, no, as in again, that was a bit of a mouthful. That was a bit of a mouthful, but I hope you can understand. Wow. Yeah, and just to add on a little, recently one of my mentees kind of reached out to me, and he was sharing with me, right, how um, he was feeling quite, he was in a troubled place basically, because he felt like he kept trying, but not only does he fail to achieve what he wants to achieve, the people around him told him that, can you stop being such a tryhard? Can you stop trying so hard? I think we all know how that feels, right? I mean, some of us maybe, for example, you might not be a very good dancer, but yeah, when the music plays and then you decide to go out there and just move along, and then someone tell you, "Hey, Stella, you can't dance. Stop doing that. You look really weird." Yeah, and I think it really has a way of making people feel small, and that okay, maybe I really am not meant for this. Okay, maybe I should stop looking at doing this, or maybe if I continue doing this, I will look so much like a try hard. Yeah, but when I heard that, I think it's really important to recognize that I feel that it's perfectly fine to try and to try hard, right? As in the fact that you're trying means that you are trying to improve, means that it's not something that is natural to you yet, but you're trying to grow into that new person, and in trying to grow into that person, obviously you have to try, because if you don't try, how are you going to be there? How are you going to get there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think for our viewers out there, I think the next time someone tells you to stop trying so hard, yeah, I mean, do give it a second thought, right? Uh, what are you trying for, and what are you trying to become, and is it something that is worth putting in effort to? And if so, like, by all means, go and try and seek help and try systematically. But try. Don't stop trying just because you are not there yet. I think that's the whole point of why we ought to try.
Definitely. Like, always
So
put yourself out there.
inspirational.
And what about you, Rachel? What's like your input in terms of these challenges, that people have?
Honestly, I think I like trying to digest what Jello has said. He's mentioned so many themes, and I'm just trying to like pinpoint.
Yeah, just connect the pieces.
Yeah,
All over the place.
no, it's not all over the place. No, it's just a lot of themes to
No.
discuss because okay, my thoughts on what Jello has mentioned is that number one is that one thing that I've realized is that there are people who are very keen on trying different things and excelling in life, right? But there's also another bunch of people who are very content with where they are, and sometimes they may feel like the pressure to excel even more or push even higher because everyone else is. And I think my message to those people is that that's great that you know that you're content at where you are and that you do not want to maybe push further, or you just want to stay where you're at and you're comfortable where you are. I think that's great. And I think honestly, I find I struggle, I think, a bit with being content with what I have and constantly striving for new things. And I think one thing my mom mentioned to me is that it's actually quite a gift to be able to be content with what you have. And I think that's something I'm still. But on the flip side, yeah, I guess that was something that was very interesting to me. But on the flip side, also, people who really do want to reach really far in life, or maybe they do want to try something new, and people are telling them, hey, don't do that because you look weird. I think it goes back to the point of self awareness and knowing about yourself. And like, is this something that I really enjoy? If it is, then I mean, by all means, do it, right? Because it makes you happy. But also having that sense of having a lens that is quite realistic as well. For example, if you maybe might not be built physically to be an ice skater, maybe then pursuing a career in ice skating may not be the best, may not be the most practical. So I guess also having that aspect within that evaluation of yourself, and also not really letting other people pull you down, because if you want something you never had, you got to do something you've never done. Yeah, but I think going back to the question of like failures and challenges in life, I think personally I have a perspective, that every problem that we face can be worked through and solved. And yes, we can't control a lot of things. For example, we can't even control the outcomes of our effort. But I think what we can control is, how much time and hard work we put in, and
Definitely.
also how we react to the outcome. And that's something that I think has been really helpful, a helpful perspective that has been getting me through life recently.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing that. I too agree that, some people are already content, and it's totally fine for you to also be content. But, to stop comparing yourself with other people's successes and their directions is something that we should also keep in mind as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's very hard. But if you are, then it's totally okay.
I find that one thing that we can develop in ourselves is the ability to be both content and satisfied and accepting of who you are as you are, but also wanting to become better at the same time. I feel that these two things are not necessarily at odds. Because when I was in junior college, one of my friends, he shared with me that he struggled to, he's like, if you are content with yourself, how can you still want to improve? Put differently, his view was that, how can you want to improve if you don't hate who you are right now? So,
Yeah,
and I feel like
it's like a
such
paradox.
mindset can be quite dangerous and detrimental, because if you are very unhappy with the person that you are, if you feel like, oh, I'm so bad at this, I'm so bad at that, okay, that's why I need to improve, right? Of course, maybe it motivates you to go out there and try to improve yourself, but I think that whole journey and whole process becomes very painful and becomes a process of
Self-doubt?
self-validation. Yeah, self-doubt leading to the need for self-validation before you can have any self-love, right? Which I find to be quite dangerous, because it just means that for every extra day before you reach the person you want to become, it becomes impossible to accept who you are right now. Yeah, I
True.
think the way I view it is really more of, I mean, this is who I am. These are the things that I'm good at. These are the things that I'm not so good at yet. But whatever I'm not so good at, like what Richard said, develop some self-awareness of what they are and work your way through that. And not all of us are meant to be figure skaters at the end of the day. But surely we can all aspire to become fitter than we were yesterday, or 2 months ago, or 1 year ago.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I think it's about having a mindset, right? This is who I am. I'm okay with who I am, but I want to become better. Yeah. That is the kind of mindset I much prefer.
And I think one exactly, Joe. I think really resonate with this, and I think there was one quote, not quote, like really just a saying that people always say, right? It's just becoming a better version of yourself, not another version of someone else, but of yourself. And I think it's keeping that authenticity and also that striving for excellence and improvement that really encapsulates. That's really encapsulated in that statement.
Well, I think, to put it in quite succinctly for the both of you, I think that what we are talking about right now is perhaps the line between being content and being complacent. So I feel like perhaps what you guys were looking to say is that an individual who's complacent knows that perhaps they could do better and that they could try harder, or perhaps they have more opportunities waiting for them. Whereas being content is to be able to achieve that kind of self-satisfaction where you feel that you have done what you could possibly do with your life so far, and that you don't feel the need to force yourself into somebody else's shoes, perhaps.
Very
So,
so nicely put.
yeah, thank you
So
for
many
all
sentences. We spent so long
like,
trying to say that.
no, it's fine.
Maybe we
But
cut out all those, and like just include what Stella said.
no, it was very beautiful to see that. You see, it took us that long to understand the paradox of those two different things that both start with a C and have completely different meanings. So perhaps just to wrap this episode up, we'd like to move on into any tips or advice that you guys can give in one sentence or two, so that we can just wrap up this question with a nice lingering question. Are you content or are you complacent? That kind of feeling.
Okay, 2 sentences. Every problem can be worked through and solved. Every failure and every downfall can be viewed as a stepping stone to something greater, like rock climbing. So, 2 sentences.
Succinctly put.
Nice. And Della?
For all the viewers out there, you are a work in progress, and that's okay. I think a lot of time when when we become adults, or when we turn 21, or whatever the definition of adult is, you kind of feel like I need to have everything in place, but that's not the case. We are all work in progress, and it's okay. Just keep progressing.
Very nice. Definitely was not one sentence, but it's
You want to cut out again, you are in a work in progress, and that's okay.
Okay, guys. Jalek and Rachel, it has really been a pleasure for us and the listeners to have you on our podcast. Thank you both very much for sparing the time and your wonderful words of advice.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
I
having
really
us.
enjoyed having this conversation.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to bring you guys over to share your insights and experiences. So we're really grateful for that. So, that's all for this episode of the Hearing Youth podcast, where youth
Heard it first.
once again, we appreciate your support and we look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.